Warnock running again in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're in great fear because you know what? She's a lawyer. She understands the law. Her organization is excellent. They know how to work the system properly.
Mm-hmm.
So they are in great fear of her. And what was the emergency to do this a few months after the runoff, after the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia publicly said that this election was fair, it had integrity, it was the gold standard of how to run an election. It was reliable, it was secure, it was efficient. He used all of these words. So why are we going in search of a solution? We have no problem.
So that this will never happen again, that the African-American vote and others will not define or elect the president of their choice. That's what this is all about. I'm surprised
100%.
that gentleman, the Secretary of State, I'm surprised we haven't found him hanged somewhere. I am just in shock.
He is public enemy number one for the Republicans because he would not overturn election, and he had the integrity to say, you know what, I voted for Trump, but I have to say the election was fair. There was no fraud. So we've built this whole legislation, and these other states now, Texas and Arizona and Michigan, all these states that are looking at it, they are all basing it on a lie. We all know there wasn't fraud. Every court looked at it.
Right. We're talking to Attorney Richard Bell. Attorney Bell, you mean to tell me there are more than 250 new election laws under consideration throughout the United States right now?
Actually, Perry, just the other day, I think it was the Brennan Center, I saw it's now approximately 360 in 47 states. So 361 in 47 states. I saw it on the Brennan Center for Justice. So it's even worse. It's worse than I thought 2 days ago.
So what has to happen in Congress, in the Senate, to stop this? That's what I want to know. Is there anything that President Biden and the House and the Senate, while they have control of these two houses, that they can do?
They better get the exemption for the filibuster, at least for civil rights and voting rights, because there's two things right now that could basically stop these things in their tracks. And that's the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would overturn that Shelby decision, make those southern states go back to pre-clearance. So before they ever do any more voting rights changes, they would have to get approval by the Justice Department, and I trust our Justice Department now, so that would be excellent.
Okay.
And the For the People Act is just terrific. It requires online voter registration, automatic voter registration, same-day registration, extended vote by mail, pre-registering 16-year-olds. I mean, it has almost everything all of us would want. But if you don't have those filibuster exemptions for at least voting rights, it's going nowhere. Biden supports it. Obviously, most of the Democrats do. But those two things would basically undo what these states are trying to do, because those laws would apply in federal elections. And as a practical matter, every 2 years there's federal elections in those states. It would be extremely difficult for them to tailor their state elections to be different than the federal elections.
Do you think Manchin is a closet Republican?
This is what I think. I think it's the best we can get from a place like West Virginia. I think he is, but I'll put a big but there. He is enough of a moderate Republican and Democratic holding that we could move him along, at least on many of these things. Just like maybe we can move him along on infrastructure. We may not get 100% of what we want, but hopefully we move along, because the problem, Perry, is we don't have anybody else but him who's going to control that final vote that we need.
Oh, gosh. I
know, it's oh, gosh. It's oh, gosh, Perry.
I'm just having this whole thing. I've just been having all these different oh gosh moments, but I'm thinking about Denver, Colorado, which has some of the what I think one of the best voting processes there are in the United States. And you had a 95% turnout because of that, because they had the drop boxes, because they mailed every eligible voter in the city of Denver a ballot. Why would people listen to this? So I think what has been said is that there are more registered Democrats in the United States than there are Republicans, even though I would say a large percentage of Democrats today would say that they are independent voters. Would you agree or not agree with that?
Yes. I always wonder what that means when they say they're independent, because the parties are so far apart.
Right.
I'm not sure what that really means anymore, but yes, I would agree.
So as an attorney, as a practicing attorney like yourself, have you ever experienced, I mean, how would you characterize being an attorney? I mean, like being a journalist, like at this time, it's just like the craziest thing in the world. But being an election attorney, a civil rights attorney, what has it been like for someone like you, Attorney Bell?
It's like being in the emergency room, except you don't get any break between shifts. That's really what it's just nonstop. You fall asleep for 10 minutes, and the next thing you know, another state's come up with 10-ball bills.
And so what is, up to now, what has been your role? Tell our listeners some of the things that you've been involved with.
Sure. In my book, Voting the Ultimate Act of Resistance, I talk about my experience both in the courtroom representing voters on Election Day to get their voting rights restored when someone's turned them down at a polling place, and I go to different states, and I'm that guy in line that gives you information that tells you how to solve your problem. In 2020, I was out in Pennsylvania. I always go to predominantly black and brown election polling places because, unfortunately, we know those are the places that are targeted.
Right.
So those are the places I have to go to. And I advise people, and that's why I tell in the book over 20 years how I tell people, you go back in there, they're not telling you what's true. And you tell them you're not leaving until at the very least you're filling out that provisional ballot. Because many times the advice given is just wrong. And I'll tell you, it is almost always black and brown people that are doing this too. I mean, it's coincidence, right, Perri?
No, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, whatever you say, yeah, it's a coincidence.
Yeah, right? Because that's what I always say. I always say when I talk to the lawyer that's inside to pull them outside, I said, mention to them the percentage of what the people look like who keep coming out here.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, Attorney Richard Bell, it is always so good to talk to you. Give our listeners your website and then tell them where they can get the book.
Great. It's 877-CALL-LAW.com, CALLLAW.com. And the book, Voting the Ultimate Act of Resistance, it's on Amazon.
All right, then. It's always good to talk to you. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again.
Perri, can't wait for the next time we're going to be talking.
All right, then. Attorney Richard Bell.